Welcome everyone, this is Short Change Games, and I'm going to be talking about, as you can see, Plug and Play. And I had no idea about the previous, hype around this game, with a lot of Let's Players just going over it and looking at how wacky and kooky and crazy it is, which I think is it's really sad that's kind of the attention it garnered. I'm sure they enjoyed the money, but their actual intent and their message, I don't think really got out at least in like YouTube realm. I look for people talking about the meaning behind this, and I don't really see much going on there. I mean, when you go to actual written reviews, I can see like a hint of people kind of describing and going through what the narrative is actually trying to tell. So that's what I'm going to attempt. I'm going to attempt at this video to try to give some meaning to this game, if there is any. It could just be pretentious bullshit, and I kind of felt like that at some points, but I like to dig in and see if there's anything worth taking away at a deeper level. So if you frequent YouTube, you've seen this game, and as you can see in the footage, it's just black and white. That is the art, but I think it really serves the purpose quite well. The animations are extremely well done. The fluidity at which you actually interact with things is just phenomenal, and the whole thing revolves around these people with outlets or plugs for heads. Now, at first, I just thought it was kind of pretentious, the black and white minimalistic effects, and what seemed like a pretty obvious theme, what they're trying to get across with human connectedness, and coupled with some very, silly moments. Like one part, he literally shits out like part of his plug pieces. But there was a part that hit me that had very little craziness in it, and it was actually not very slow as far as any sort of gameplay goes. Again, there's not really gameplay in here, but there was one part that I wouldn't even call it anything like that. It was just an interaction between what would be a male and a female, and it hits you at the very end of the conversation. And I mean, for those of you who haven't played it, I mean, if you're watching this, you're pretty much ruining the whole thing. It's only 15 minutes long, and the conversation essentially ends with "it hurts," talking not physical pain, but an emotional pain. And I think that part was when I realized that there was something deeper here. They wouldn't put in that entire piece because there was no real humor there. It was actually just extremely depressing. And from that point on, I kind of took this game a little more seriously, and I wanted to understand it at a deeper level. Now, the mechanics themselves revolve around physics and some sort of puzzle-ish things. It's more of try something on the screen, because I played it on a mobile and on the PC, but I mean on mobile you just tap shit and move shit around until something happens, and it's relatively fast. And most of the time it's very simple because there's only a few things on the screen at a time. So given that, I was not focused on that. I was trying to look at, like I said, after my first playthrough, what if this had any meaning behind it. Now, most of the interactions involve a plug normally going into a socket. I wouldn't even say that. There was just so many just random moments. But when you take a step back and look at it, there's always people or the plugs in the sockets, and that was the central part of it. Was there was, people. I mean, it's because there's no heads, but it's centered around human connectedness, human interaction. I think that's the easiest one to see if you're going to interpret any sort of significance from this, is that it's clearly about human connectedness because things are literally connecting together. And right from the outset, part of this connectedness, and you can kind of feel it, it's very surreal, is they have these sexual undertones. Because, again, it's easy to see plugging things into the sockets, but the actual physical movements, again, this goes back to the animation and how fluid it feels. It has this little bit of a sexual feeling to it. It kind of creeps you out, and I think that's a lot of people, one of their first feelings, at a more subconscious level, is there's something sexually odd about this, which sounds odd, but there just is. And at the surface level of getting any kind of interpretation out of this, that's the easiest thing to look at is human connectedness, specifically with sexuality. There's a whole line of guys at one point, I'm saying because they all had the plugs, and they're just literally start pushing each other. They're tapping each other, and then they get more and more frustrated, and they start pushing each other. And the one conversation you have with another person is of the opposite gender, and if you did it right, I'm just going to say right, if the normal way is you normally end up being the guy talking to the female. You can actually flip that around, but most people end up talking as the guy, and you get rejected. You get flat out rejected, and your whole goal is not to get with the person, but you're trying to relate to this individual, and you might have, it seems like y'all had a connection at one point, but you're just being denied, you're being rejected, or you're being taken out of their life. And that's part of human relations. things break down over time, or you're not able to actually connect with someone you've been wanting to connect with for some time. Now, there were a few parts that would confuse me, like they wouldn't play into this kind of idea that I was having. I mean, there was one part that was very easy and obvious to me, is there was people, like two guys running around like crazy, and that's kind of the search, that's kind of the look. You're so driven by your hormones, like you're kind of thrown every which way. I'm not saying like females can't. It's just specifically in this, there was the males. But there were a few parts. There was the part where he literally, like I said, shits out part of like the prongs on his head. That was kind of a stretch. That was one of those things that seems pretentious. I'm like, maybe he's trying to deal with like his gender identity. I mean, I'm not going to get into that conversation. That's not my place. But I was trying to get some kind of meaning, but that felt more of just silly and humorous to me. There's another part where two people are actually attached already to cords, and to me that kind of symbolized that they were either already a part of a relationship, or too young, too connected to like their innocence or something else that's getting in the way of them being together, but they finally get pulled in certain directions, which is toward each other, and that thing comes unplugged and they're able to actually connect. But then two people walk up and stick the plugs in their asses. I don't understand that part. Like, maybe kids, but fuck if I know. I mean, because then they go off. I'm like, maybe a foursome, but it's one of those. Some of them are just really hard. And there's another part with a circle of the plugs of the all would be men, and they just rotate places. There's an empty spot, and then one jumps off of the plug and goes up to the other guy's ass. And I can't think. This is the circle of life. There's some parts I'm just like, it's hard not to think it's just pretentious or going for humor. But I do enjoy other people's interpretations, so I was kind of going around scanning, see if I can find anything that other people thought and found meaning from. One was really interesting. It was about how our reliance on electricity is just kind of overblown, and without it, like we as a human race don't really. I mean, there were some points where I was like, maybe. I'm like, I don't really see it, but I thought that was a really good interpretation of how much we actually need electricity and how desperate we are to get our electronic fix. Even the name references how fast we want things, how instantaneous we want our electronics to be now. And that was really the only other interpretation I saw online, and the only other thing I could possibly think of, it was a stretch, is the chronicling of human life, obviously with a lot of it related to sexuality. I mean, you have the guy at the start running around, running wild in the black screen, and that's kind of how you end, but as one of the people who was stuck in the original asses of the two people who connect, those two people being like, husband, wife, whatever, have children, have the offspring, and they move on, and because the whole struggle is people like progressing through their life, trying to deal with these interactions. And then the scene at the end with the circle, again, circle of life, where one person drops off but goes right back because they don't end there, whether it be their legacy, whether it be their actual like physical atoms being recreated into something else. I mean, kind of a stretch, but that's all for me. If you have anything to like add to this conversation, you have your own interpretation, I would love to hear that. I mean, I think it's chock full of imagery and things that you can really draw from this if you dive into it deep enough. And if you like the video, give it a like. If you really like it and want to see more, think of subscribing. And if you don't care, go away. So that's all for me, and I'm out.